Vienna has been named the most livable city in the world 5 times. Behind the palaces and opulent gardens is a city designed for its inhabitants. Green spaces, lively culture, and efficient public transport. But a huge contributing factor to this city's success is its social housing system.
It's known as a renter's utopia because being a tenant here is secure and affordable. The majority spend no more than 1/3 of their income on housing, leaving the rest to spend on quality of life. So, what can Australia learn from Europe's largest landlord?
This is one of Vienna's most desirable neighbourhoods. Nestled amongst the Baroque apartment buildings is a public housing block known as Gemeindebau.
Hello, it's Jen.
I'm meeting a young couple who live here, thanks to an affordable housing scheme that allows people under 30 to access social housing. Hi, I'm Jen.
Hey, Max. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Come in.
Thank you.
This is my partner, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Jen, nice to meet you.
Yeah, this is our home.
Wow, it's beautiful. It's such a big living room.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the main features. Let me show you around a bit. Here is our kitchen, connected to the living room.
It's quite roomy as well.
Yeah.
Got lots of space.
So for the kitchen, you have to bring
This apartment is owned by the city of Vienna. Rent is capped and controlled by the government. There are no ongoing income checks, and they can decorate the apartment however they like. So how much do you pay for this apartment?
So we pay about 640 euros per month.
Wow.
It's about a quarter of our income together.
An Australian earning $70,000 per year would need to spend 52% of their income to meet the national median rent on an apartment.
For a similar apartment in private housing, I would maybe pay double almost.
And having low rent, what does that leave you to spend the rest of your money on?
Gives you freedom of mind. Of course, most importantly, to not have to worry where to come up with the money for rent or being evicted. But next to that, of course, it leaves more money to spend on the things that are important. For me personally, it's traveling, it's meeting people.
And how long can you stay here for?
However long I wanted to, theoretically. So the apartment, the leases are without any term limits. And then there's even ways to give the lease to your immediate family if you wanted to and they're eligible.
In Vienna, approximately 50% of the population live in some form of social housing, either government-owned or government-subsidized. Whereas in Australia, just 4% live in social housing, with an additional 1.4 million households receiving Commonwealth rent assistance. Here, Gemeindebau are spread all across the city. Some are even tourist attractions.
Welcome to the Karl-Marx-Hof. This is the main square we're moving in now. This is the very famous facade of the complex.
Wow, it's enormous. How big is it?
As a whole, it spans across 1.2 kilometers in length, so it's the longest consecutive housing complex in the world.
Max isn't just a tenant of social housing. He's also an urban planner and historian.
So this is the washing saloon, the building where the museum is in. We have our little museum inside the second floor.
Great. You work here?
Yeah, I work here.
After World War I, Vienna was in the grips of a housing crisis due to a population boom. Many thousands lived in overcrowded slums, a hotbed for tuberculosis.
Not even 10% of the apartment met the minimum requirement for prison cells.
Wow.
Often people kind of lived like criminals.
To fix the crisis, the Social Democratic government pledged 65,000 new apartments, funded by a 1% construction tax and taxes on luxuries like automobiles and horse racing. There was also a tax on champagne.
Yeah.
The era became known as Red Vienna.
We're inside one of the so-called garden squares. You can see about half of the apartments have those 10 square meters, very grand balconies.
It's very grand.
Yeah. So for the working class people, especially back then, it must have been unbelievable to be shown one of those apartments in those complexes and then kind of having explained to them that could be rented at a fraction of the cost of the apartment that they would live in before.
Oh yeah, it's unique having a balcony.
The cost of rent for public housing is set by government legislation. The current base rate is €6.67 per square metre per month. Private rentals are between €12 to €22 per square metre, depending on the location.
And what's it like for people who live here now? Are they proud to live in Karl-Marx-Hof?
I think it varies a bit. Some people kind of live here very proudly, they know of the history. Some people often are very surprised by seeing us giving tours for 30 to 40 people. They're like wondering why so many people kind of come to their houses. But nowadays, for the last 10 years with this Young Viennese program, so a lot of young people now moving in, kind of also changed the image, I think, of social housing. So now I think it got a kind of certain cool feeling to it often in younger circles.
There's more than 1,200 apartments in this complex, all owned and managed by government agency Wiener Wohnen.
How many people live here in Vienna in social housing?
So actually, of the 2 million inhabitants that we have in Vienna, over half are living in affordable apartments. We have, on the one hand, the municipal sector that consists of 220,000 apartments that belong to the city of Vienna. And then, on the other hand, we have the subsidized sector with approximately 200,000 subsidized apartments, which are built with city subsidies.
To be eligible for both types of social housing, a person must be over 18, an Austrian citizen or have equivalent status, have lived in Vienna for 2 years, and their income must be under a certain threshold. For 2026, the monthly net income limit is €4,377. That's around €52,000 per year or 85,000 Australian dollars.
And this is quite high when we take into account that almost 80% of the Viennese earn less, which means they are eligible to enter this segment. The income threshold is checked only once and then never again, and we do that for a reason, because we want to create stable communities that get to know each other, that know each other for generations, where people live in the same place for a long time and know their neighbors. And also we take care of the social mix. So having people with different backgrounds, earning different wages, living side by side, and all of these aspects taken together contribute to the fact that we have a very high living quality in Vienna.
Alte Erla is a subsidised housing complex on the outskirts of the city. It was built in the 1980s and designed by famous Austrian architect Harry Gluck.
One thing Harry Gluck talked about a lot is he said, okay, how do very rich people, how do they actually live? They have a lot of green, they have access to water, they have access to fresh air, and they have a good view. And he thought about how could we make this achievable for the most people at the time and affordable at the same time.
10,000 people live here. Anna Hita was a resident in the early 2000s.
So what was it like growing up here?
Growing up here, I had a lot more autonomy than a lot of my friends did who grew up more in the inner city, because the buildings are surrounded by these huge parks. We could really go out on our own. We could walk to the kindergarten by ourselves.
And is it built in such a way that you don't need to leave?
Yeah, it's conceptualized as a satellite town, basically.
Anna Hita still has links to this housing complex, and a close friend has given her the keys to her 2-bedroom apartment.
So this is a very typical, very dark corridor, not very inviting, not very friendly. But this was actually done on purpose because the architect believed that all the areas that are reached by natural sunlight, they should be used for living areas and not corridors that you spend 10 seconds a day in. You see, this was 10 seconds.
Yeah, using the space well.
Exactly. So now we're entering a light flooded flat. So this was built in the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
But I feel like in general it aged very, very well. You have a lot of natural light coming in. The ceilings are quite low because they really optimized for living space. They wanted to have as many flats as possible on top of each other. So this is a sort of office area.
Yeah, huge study.
Yes, it's very big. So originally, I don't think it was intended as a study, but you can tell that the floor plan is very flexible. So people, the ways of living have adapted, and Red Vienna is really flexible enough so that you could adapt your way of living. And people use these spaces in all sorts of different ways now. They rip out walls, they turn dining rooms into studies, and it works perfectly well. So this is the balcony.
Such a nice green and outdoor space.
Yes, 100%. It feels like a garden. You have a lot of other people on top of you, below you, right and left, but you don't see them and you don't feel them. Instead, if you look out the window or out your balcony, the next house is very far away. Even if you see someone else standing on another balcony, you will not be able to see their face.
This complex was built and is managed by a non-profit housing association. Rents are calculated to cover the costs of construction and maintenance. Any surplus funds must be reinvested into new housing construction. In return, the Housing Association receives government support, like low-income loans and tax exemptions. In this scenario, there's no landlord or property developers getting rich, which has a price dampening effect across the entire rental market.
So there are a lot of people who are really proud of the city for having this social democratic past and also sometimes present, who really closely feel attached to these ideals and to these utopian ideals. But other people still have more conservative views of housing and see this as a compromise, basically.
The social housing system here was born out of socialism, but recently Austrian politics has shifted to the right. In 2024 parliamentary elections, the far-right Freedom Party got the highest percentage of votes with almost 29%.
Ich möchte mit euch gemeinsam die Richtigen schützen und das ist die eigene Bevölkerung. Und deshalb Remigration für all diejenigen, die glauben, sich nicht an unsere Regeln halten zu müssen.
However, they were unable to form government, so a coalition of three centrist parties emerged. In March 2025, the new government temporarily suspended family reunification visas for refugees, citing overstretched social resources. Migrant advocates say there's growing anti-immigration sentiment here, and racism has become normalised. But has it always been like this?
Hello.
Hi, Estra.
Hi.
Thank you for meeting me here.
Of course. Welcome in Vienna.
Thank you very
in
much.
the 16th district.
Thank you. So where did your parents live? Where do they live?
Here, I was 20 years here from 10 until 31. I also lived with my parents a long time.
Yeah.
So I was 21 years in this Gemeindebau. I grew up here.
Esra Osman is the daughter of Turkish migrants. She remembers the excitement and gratitude her family felt when they first moved into this social housing complex. But she didn't feel completely at home here.
The energy between the people who lives here was not always good. The neighbors was not so nice, they don't say hi. Also my grandfather said also you must to be always thankful to the Austrian people, thankful that you can live here, thankful that you can have the flat. And one time I say, hey, I was grown up here, it's also my city, I have the Austrian citizens. I was grown up here, I go to the school here, I make my doctorate here, so I'm Austrian.
Has the rise in far-right ideology impacted you?
Yes, of course. In my, for 10 years, it was right, to go in the right side was shaming, you know? The people don't say it. They say, yeah, okay, we hate them, but psh. So, and now they say it. Women with hijabi, they get it really, the mostest racism get the woman with hijabi. For 1 year, I go with my mother on the Mariferstraße, and so some guy who looks like a Nazi, Was heißt spucken?
I spit.
I speak to my mom's face and go, and nobody says something. So this is happening also. We must also speak about this experience. I think it's really important. Yeah, super, aha. Nie wieder, dieser Spießer, ich spür den Fieber, du bist hier nur ein Mieter, ich immer ein Krieger. Ich bin immer ein Krieger. Nochmal, einmal. Ich mach wieder Teilshaft auf.
Esra has a PhD in fine arts and earns a living as a rapper and artist. Her music draws heavily from her experiences growing up in Austria.
I'm a part of S-Rap, music rap duo from Austria. We are two siblings, it's my brother and me, and we make music about migration, feminism, gentrification, about Gemeindebau. And this is our studio.
Es wird langsam Zeit, warte mal, mich zu äußern zu dieser Scheiße, Mann. Bin neue Kabadaie aus
Although Esra experienced discrimination in Vienna, she also credits the city's unique social housing system for giving her opportunities. Without stable and affordable rent, she says she wouldn't be able to pursue a career in the arts.
And what's your living situation? Like, how much do you pay in rent?
I pay until I have just also one room, it's also my bedroom, and one kitchen, and I pay 350 like this, approximately 350 in a month.
150 euros in a month.
Yes.
For rent.
Yes. I must say, Vienna have two faces for me. It's the face of pain, and is the face of opportunities. I think everybody in this life should have right to have a good flat, and I think Gemeindebau gives the people a right to live also good. You know, you don't see it everywhere. In other states, if you are poor, you see also in your flat that you are poor. Here, the Bau is not like a poorness, you know what I mean? And this make you also in one quality with the other people, and this is really important.
Schieß gegen Öle, bist aber nicht besser. Du bist nicht fresher in deinem Tester. Du kommst mir echt nah, ich sag's dir etwa. Beim nächsten Mal bekommst du Schläge extra. Ist alle wirr, ist alle wirr.
The purpose of social housing is to eradicate poverty and inequality. But there are still people here in Vienna falling through the cracks. In recent years, Austria's asylum intake has been among the highest per capita in the European Union, though this trend is declining. Currently, there are about 26,000 asylum seekers here. I've come to meet a Syrian family who arrived in Vienna in 2022 and are stuck in housing limbo.
نحن اجينا عن طريق الغابات، غابات بلغاريا وغابات صربيا، ووصلنا على هنغاريا، بعدين على النمسا. زوجتي كانت حامل، ما كنت مفكر انا باللجوء اطلاقا، لا انا ولا زوجتي، بس وقت اللي صار عندنا حمل والوضع بسوريا حرب، اضطرينا نعمل لجوء هون.
A journalist in Syria, Sam says he was under pressure to join Bashar al-Assad's military forces and decided to leave out of fear.
نحن حصلنا إقامة ثانوية، يعني هاي حماية مؤقتة، بس قالوا لنا إنه بفيينا راح يكون أمور السكن صعبة كتير، وبالفعل إجينا لهون، قعدنا عند أصدقاء لنا موجودين هن أصلا من سوريا، قعدنا عندهم ببيت صغير هو عبارة عن غرفة واحدة.
When the friends could no longer accommodate them, Sam and his family ended up homeless and begging on the street. They eventually turned to this social housing organisation for help. Utopia offers accommodation for asylum seekers and assists with the legal process for their residency claims.
Wir bieten Unterkünfte in Form von Einzelzimmer oder wir haben auch Wohnungen für Familien. Die Wohnungen sind in ganz Wien.
Manager Shireen Berens-Basher says Vienna's world-famous social housing system is little help to her clients.
Für mich ist es so schwach, weil damit jemand einen Anspruch auf eine Gemeindewohnung haben, darf er nur Asylberechtigter sein. Das heißt, das muss jemand sein, der Asyl erhalten hat. So, die sind angewiesen auf diesen Privatmarkt und da leiden sie sehr. Die Menschen brauchen Kautionen zu zahlen und in den meisten Fällen ist das sehr hoch. Und wenn sie aus Afrika kommen, wenn sie dunkel sind, wenn sie schwarz sind, haben sie keine Chance. Praktisch keine Chance.
But even with asylum status, Shireen says people can get stuck in the queue for social housing for years. Without regular income checks, some people hold on to their apartments for decades, including those who've had significant increases in their income.
Es ist natürlich nicht gerecht, weil andere brauchen das Nötige oder haben das Notwendige.
Vienna has one of the largest stocks of affordable and social housing in Europe, but it's also one of the fastest growing cities, putting the system under pressure. Just north of the city is a huge urban development project called Aspern-Seerstadt, aimed at easing some of that pressure for the future. It's built on a former airfield, and when all building phases are completed in 2030, it will house 25,000 residents.
Hallo. 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 Wie heißt du? Jakob. Oh, ich bin Jennifer. Hallo.
The Poisel family recently moved in after eldest son, Simon, enrolled in a newly built school for disabled children.
Das erste Mal die Seestadt gesehen und haben gesagt, wow, das ist wie Urlaub und es ist so modern alles und so große Gehsteige und so wenig Autos und keine Hürden für ihn.
This entire satellite town was designed with consideration for families, safety and quality of life. There's a beach and a swimming pond, express public transport links to downtown Vienna, and all amenities are within walking distance, including the ice cream parlour.
So, was ist dein Lieblingsgeschmack?
Meines Kaugummi-Eis.
Kaugummi-Eis. Oh, wow.
60% of the residential development here must be allocated to subsidized housing, with the remaining 40% set aside for the private market.
Wieder heim.
The Poisels' 3-bedroom apartment is in a cooperative building. It was built with some funding from the city of Vienna. The housing association that built it can only make a limited profit. The Poisels made a deposit up front. This guarantees them ongoing capped rent, and they get a say in how the apartment was designed and how it's managed.
Das ist der Raum von Simon, der liegt eben jetzt in Pferde. Das haben wir das Thema Pferde ausgewählt oder er hat auch seine Lego-Welten hier aufgebaut.
Süß.
Das ist sein Reich. Das ist das Badezimmer, wo wir auch die Türen vergrößern lassen konnten vor dem Einzug und eine Badewanne mit Einstieg einbauen konnten, damit sie barrierefrei ist und für Simon zugänglich ist.
Ja, und das ist unsere große Wohnküche mit, genau hier unsere neue Küche, mit Esstisch, wo eben gespielt und gelernt und gegessen.
Großer Balkon?
Ja.
Und 2?
Hier gemütlich sitze ich dann zum Morgenkaffee und hier.
Und was ist die Miete hier?
Die Miete sind 1300. Pro Monat, genau. Also es ist für Wien günstig. Das Leben geht sich gut aus, also weil die Mieten eben nicht so hoch sind, ist es definitiv sehr leistbar.
The rent is equivalent to just over $500 Australian per week for 3 bedrooms. But getting this apartment meant being accepted by the cooperative to make sure the family would be a good fit for the community here.
Und da mussten wir uns bewerben und haben eben 7 Fragen beantwortet und mehrere Treffen gehabt. Und dann hat eben der Verein entschieden, dass wir gut zu ihnen passen und wurden aufgenommen. Es ist kein befristeter Vertrag, es ist eine unbefristete Miete. Und solange es uns gefällt und das wird es, denke ich, noch sehr lange bleiben wir hier.
The Australian government has created a $10 billion housing fund, which includes 20,000 new social homes and 10,000 new affordable homes as part of its housing agenda. But will initiatives like this be enough to fix the housing crisis? Or should Australia be looking at a major housing shift, just like Vienna did over 100 years ago?
Things looked very different at the beginning of the 20th century when Vienna was facing a housing crisis. And housing was already back then seen as a basic right and not a commodity. And this is something that we still keep up to this day, where we want to provide affordable homes, knowing that they not only benefit the people who live in those affordable apartments, but also society at large.
I have a rich life, but I'm not rich. I say this always. I have really everything. I don't have a lot of money, but I have everything. I make art. I have a flat for me, it's warm, I have shower. I can eat everything what I want, and I will eat also everything what I want. Yeah, it's not crazy a lot. There are always people who have more, but alhamdulillah we have enough. Really good falafel with hummus. You must come to Vienna to eat this falafel.